Welcome to Opera Central, where artists and administrators come together and talk about the world of arts. I'm Katie Nicholson, Director of Development for the Central City Opera, and today I am joined by Phebe Berkowitz-Tanners. Phebe is incredibly connected to the opera world. She grew up in a very musical household and continued her love of music and opera into her professional career. Phoebe's first introduction to Central City and the Central City Opera was back in 1952 when her father, David Berkowitz, was in the CCO Orchestra. So welcome, Phebe.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us all the way from New York. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we've missed seeing you and all of our patrons actually this year for the festival. So it's really nice to virtually see you. So I think we'll just jump right in if you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. So like I said, you started your time here back in 1952, but you recently came back into our lives in 2013. What made you reach back out?
Well, in 2013, our only son, Jonathan, moved to Los Angeles, and he was celebrating his 26th birthday in October of that year, and my husband and I decided to meet him in Denver for his birthday. So, and I said, well, we have to stay at the Brown Palace Hotel. That's the historic hotel that I know so well, and they agreed. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to touch base again after 50 years with the Central City Opera, and I called the association's offices, and I talked to Wanda Larson, her incredible administrator. And I said, I just like to visit the offices, maybe look at some old programs or posters. And she said, well, why don't we meet in Central City? And, you can look around again. And I said, great. So on Saturday morning of Halloween weekend, I remember distinctly, the weather was gorgeous, warm and sunny. And so we drove up to Central City, and Wanda greeted us, and she said, I've arranged for you to have a tour. There was this great guide who worked with the Gilpin County Historic Society. So first we took a tour, and I kind of kept interrupting the guide and saying, no, that's not right. But anyway, I tried to control myself. Yeah. And then I think we drove around a little bit. We drove to Nevadaville, mm-hmm. the famous ghost town. And we had a couple of, well, you might call paranormal experiences over that Thanksgiving weekend. That was a little bit weird, but exciting nonetheless. And then we drove around with Wanda and visited all of the houses that my family lived in over the decade that my dad played in the orchestra. And it was just an incredible day. Oh, and this is the pièce de résistance. Wanda gave us some books, and she said, I have some vintage postcards, and maybe you would like them. So she handed me one, and it was a photograph of Eureka Street, like right outside the Teller House. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it, and I said, oh my God, that's my dad's car, his 1953 Oldsmobile. And he was parked because he was rehearsing. And that did it. I was like, I cannot lose contact with my home.
That is so amazing. I've seen that postcard. You sent us a few of those pictures, and I recognized the one picture that you sent that we have as a postcard. It must be the same one. That is so amazing.
So that, yeah.
Oh, wow. So driving back through the town, when was the next time you visited? And then kind of what was the difference between when you were first there than when you came back in 2013?
Well, when I came back, I was thrilled to see that so much of the history had been preserved. With landmark houses, and of course the opera house looking amazing, and mostly the same, although the backstage has been modernized, the stage and the costume shop and the stage door and new seats, and but what was really different, so when we were there for all those summers, there are two streets, Eureka Street and the Main Street, and there were 14 saloons. Saloons with swinging doors, the real thing. And there was one grocery store, and there was the famous Springer's Pharmacy, which I think is still there as a drugstore, or not exactly sure. So in that regard, it was very different, very different. Now you have casinos, but not as many as saloons in the day.
That's amazing. So when you were up there, some of the pictures you sent, you were in some of the productions?
Yes, actually, all three of us, my older sister Lynn, my younger brother Robert. Yeah, I think my first one might have been Lucia. We were in the second act, The Wedding, and all of the operas in those days were performed in English. And so even though we were supering, we did sing along. Some in the noble, some in the... And yeah, that's how we kind of learned the operas. And we were in La Boheme, and my sister appeared in Aida as a golden idol, hoisted on the arms of some incredible ballet dancers, painted gold from head to toe. And one other story. My brother was part of the children's chorus in La Pericole, and Cyril Richard, the famous British actor, directed and starred in Pericole. And my little brother entered way before his cue. He stopped the actor and he yelled, "The circus is here!" And it was devastating to him and to us.
Yeah.
And Cyril Richard, such a kind man, said, It's okay, Robert. It's okay. I make mistakes all the time." And Robert said, "Yeah, but not in front of 750 people." So those are things you don't forget. They stay with you.
Yeah. So not only did he come in early, but he had a loud line that he yelled.
A loud solo line. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll stick with you. So you talk about your sister and your brother, and then your dad was in the orchestra. What was it like growing up in a musical household like that?
Well, I loved it.
Yeah.
And just to tell you a little bit more about how that affected us when we were in Central City. So my dad was a violist. He played with the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. And in those days, many of the musicians were from the Met, the New York Philharmonic, Cleveland Orchestra, Denver Symphony, which I think today is also the case. So what was there to do in Central City but listen to opera? And I parked myself in that opera house. When there was a rehearsal, I was there. So I learned to love the 17 operas that my dad played in over those years. I think I said they were all in English. Mm-hmm. And so I memorized all of those operas. And many of the kids, of the singers, we did the same thing. And it was just incredible musical education. And my dad started a string quartet, and we had performances in our homes, and it was all about the music.
Yeah, so you and the other kids would put on your own little operas.
Yes, we did. This was really crazy. The first year that we were there, I think we had already listened to recordings of Carmen at home, the famous Risa Stevens recording. And that summer, we more or less memorized Carmen. I mean, I was 7, my sister was 9, and we lived in this house. It was called the Gypsy Rose Lee House, actually. She was a very famous stripper, vaudeville artist, and she appeared in a play in Central City. It was Diamond Lil. And I don't think the house bears that name any longer, but anyway, I digress. In the backyard of that house, we put up a clothesline and a curtain, and we performed our version of Carmen. And I always, with all of our parodies or interpretations, I had to play the male roles. So my sister always had the female lead. So that summer, in those days, Central City also had a play season that followed the opera season. And most of those plays were current Broadway hits, with very famous actors and actresses, Julie Harris and Tammy Grimes. And so that summer, I think the play was The Time of the Cuckoo, starring Shirley Booth and Claire Booth Luce. And they came to our house and they watched our performance. So,
oh my gosh.
It was so crazy. And that kind of started the parody that we all took part in, including the famous ushers. Mm-hmm. And it got bigger and better. And yeah.
That is so much fun. I love that kind of childhood.
It was absolutely incredible. Yeah. And the artists I met and their families, it seems that those connections, I have never lost them. Everywhere I've been, I've connected with someone from my days in Central City. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just like you said, connections that went with you from your childhood to your adult life. You had mentioned your dad played in the Met Orchestra, but that was not your last interaction with the Met.
Oh, no.
No. Do you want to talk about how you got involved there?
Okay. Yes. Actually, no, I'm laughing because I'm thinking back to Central City. Nathaniel Merrill was a director. He directed many productions in Central City and also the Met. He was really well known. And so when I was 19, I was going to Indiana University, majoring in music, and my dad asked him, what would be the next step for Phoebe? And he said, well, I think she should get married. So that's the way it was in those days. But I was lucky enough to have been awarded a scholarship and by Indiana University when I was going for my master's in theater. Mm-hmm. And I ended up in Germany at the Hamburg State Opera. I won't go into all of that, but I had 5 fabulous years there. So one of the directors, August Aberdeen, was directing Tristan at the Met in 1971. It was Rudolph Bing's last new production. Mm-hmm. And he said, Phoebe, I would like you to be my personal assistant. So here I was in Germany, a New York girl, and that's how I started at the Met. So that one season. And I think I directed a revival that season, but then I went back to Europe. I went back to Hamburg and then the Paris Opera. And then in 1974, I was asked to join the Met as a member of the ensemble, and I did. And I stayed from 1974 till 2016, on and off. And I started as assistant director, and then I became a director directing revivals productions, and then eventually executive stage director. So I was also an administrator.
And did you also do stage directing at Hamburg and Paris?
In Hamburg, so I started as an intern, and I was only supposed to stay for 1 year. Mm-hmm. Ralph Lieberman was the general manager. He was a famous composer and general manager. And so the beginning of that first season, I would sit on stage and I would watch, and I tried to learn German. I didn't really speak a word when I arrived. But, the company members were so kind. I worked in the makeup department and the costume department, and everyone just helped me learn German. So I was sitting on the stage watching the rehearsals of the world premiere of Giancarlo Menotti's Help, Help, the Globalinks, and Thomas Shippers was the conductor. Menotti called us all to his hotel, the Vier Jahreszeiten, the hotel in Hamburg, and his team, and we talked, and he said, this is a world premiere, and I want someone who's been observing to give the light cues, not just someone on staff who hasn't been with us from the beginning. And he looked at me and he said, Phoebe, can you say, because I was learning German,
right? Could
you say, Achtung, 1, 2, 3? I said, yeah, I think I could do that. So I ended up in charge of the cues for that production, and Lieberman hired me as lighting stage manager. And so I spent 4 years there as lighting stage manager, and then when Lieberman took over the Paris Opera, he took me with him as a stage director. So I spent a year there, and then it was back to America, the San Francisco Opera, a couple of other companies, but mostly the Met.
That is so amazing. I just love hearing about your story. It's inspiring too.
Wow. I love to inspire. I do. I mean,
Well, you inspire us every time we get to talk to you and see you. We, again, like I said before, we haven't been able to see you this year, but we have been able to put up a few plaques. So you have a few little memorials up in Central City. There is one in the pit. And is that one for your father?
that was for my father and my mother, in honor of them, um, and for dedicated to my father's artistry, and also to the way that they brought us up in Central City, and they were such gracious hosts. Mm-hmm. And so we got to know so many artists and spend so much time with them because of my parents. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's why that plaque is there.
And then you have a bench for
I have several benches.
Several benches.
Because well, you have your beautiful rose garden, and in reconnecting to Central and wanting to give back, I just decided, well, along with my husband and my son Jonathan, why not honor some of the artists who helped me with my career, also family members. Actually, one of the plaques is in honor of John Moriarty. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows who he is, famed general manager. And I never worked with John in Central City, mm-hmm. but when I was a junior in college, I had an opportunity to work at the Lake George Opera. And David Lloyd, actually, another Central City veteran, famous tenor, was the general manager of the Lake George Opera. And John was the stage manager. So I accepted a job, $25 a week, which wasn't much in those days either. And my job was to kind of keep the stage clean and make sure props were, in their place. And I got to know John, and he said, Phoebe, if I could teach you to be a stage manager, then I could conduct. And so I said, okay, I'm game. And he did, and I think the first opera I stage managed there in Lake George was La Traviata, and John conducted it. And I think I spent 3 seasons there, and with John as friend and mentor. So I think one of my first plaques, one of my first dedications to Central City was in honor of John.
That is so lovely. I love the partnerships that you've held on to.
I'm still holding on to them. It's crazy that, well, Central City then and now always employed world-class artists. I know I might overuse that term, but the standard of excellence. And after and during that decade, I just ran into them everywhere I went. Mm-hmm. To Arlene Saunders, who sang Me and Bohème, and Dick Castley, who starred in A Girl of the Golden West. So when I got to Hamburg, they embraced me. So there was an American community waiting for me. But everywhere, at the Met, time after time.
Yeah.
It's just, but
I love that.
that's our art form, right? The warmth, the camaraderie, the appreciation of the music, living in essence for the music.
It's so special. It's so special. And as like you were talking about before, you come back into our lives. You've been supporting us for so long. You've given back to our company so much, both as in your creative professional career and as a donor. What inspires you to continue giving?
I hope to be able to give for many more years, and I am in awe of the way the company is run and exists. Under Pat's direction, this desire to preserve the historic aspects of the second oldest festival in America, and yet to be innovative. I find it so inspiring, and I've been lucky enough to, see a couple of productions over the past few years. Not as many as I would like, but have always been so thrilled and moved. And there's something special about Central City Opera. I think you'll agree, right?
I absolutely do agree. When I first started working here back in 2017, I just moved from Dallas, Texas. And on one of my first days, Scott Finley, the old director of development, asked me to come up and help clean out the Johnson House for the festival season. And that was the first time that I've driven up a mountain. I've done it many times since. And that was the first time I actually got to see the town. It's remarkable how preserved it is. It's just, yeah. And to see its juxtaposition with Blackhawk, it's just night and day.
Right? I know. Yeah. You were hooked, I think, as is almost everyone who steps foot in Central City. And there was one other thing that meant so much to me during those years that comes to mind. And that is when I was 10 years old, I was privileged enough to sit in on almost every rehearsal of the Ballad of Baby Doe, Douglas Moore and John Latouche's amazing creation. And that was the world premiere season.
Oh, yeah.
And it was so exciting. Imagine, I was 10 years old, and I got to see them working, continuing to create, and it was so fascinating. The cast was amazing, and actually the Baby Doe, the first Baby Doe was Dolores Wilson. She had been performing with the Metropolitan Opera, and everyone and so many Coloradans claim to have known Baby Doe or be related to her and her family. They just couldn't get over the resemblance. And John Latouche, the brilliant lyricist, and Dolores Wilson fell in love. And so that was very exciting also, knowing that. And unfortunately, Latouche died 1 month after the premiere. He was only, I think, 38 years old, and Dolores Wilson never performed Baby Doe in Central City again, maybe somewhere else. But then there were many others who followed. Lena Gabriele, Judith Raskin, actually Beverly Sills, but not in Central City. Beverly Sills performed Aida in Central City, which was really an unusual role for her, and one that she only performed a few times.
Did you see that one?
Yeah, I did, yeah. So I love that Baby Doe is revived regularly, and I think it means a lot to Coloradans and people who come from all over the country to see it. It's a thrilling story, and another opera that impressed me so during that time was Puccini's The Girl of the Golden West, because it was the Golden
West.
And that also kind of hooked me. I fell in love with that opera and the realism, and once again, just the lure of the West.
Well, in that setting, with so many saloons around, how could you not fall in love?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Phoebe, I think we're coming up on our last few minutes here. So thank you so much for joining us on Opera Central. It has been truly a pleasure.
Thank you, Katie. It's my pleasure.
Well, thank you, everyone who tuned in. Find more episodes of Opera Central and other great online programming at centralcityopera.org. Thanks for being with us today.
Bye.